Hello, I'm Malcolm Hazlitt.
And I'm Janice Baker. What is an unusualist?
Well, I am.
Really?
Well, isn't everyone unusual in their own particular way?
Of course, but our guest this week is especially unusual.
I know, because it's unusualist Raymond Crowe next on Our Time. Hello, Janice, welcome back.
Thank you.
Janice has been away for the last few weeks, but she hasn't missed a single program. Isn't that amazing?
It's very clever.
Where did you go?
I was travelling all through Europe, and then at the end of the holiday we had a week in Ireland, which I'd always wanted to do, and it was beautiful.
Oh, you poor thing. I
But
went to
very
Bowden.
cold.
I went to Bowden. It was lovely. Look, our very special guest is unusualist Raymond Crowe. Welcome, Ray.
Hello.
Hello.
Lovely to see you. You've just got back to Australia from where?
The US.
And what were you doing over
I
there?
was touring with a company called The Illusionists.
We know that.
Oh, okay.
So that's the end of the interview. So next on Our Time, Ray, this is an amazing thing, though, that you would end up with such a big show, because it is the biggest show touring the world, isn't it?
It's the largest touring magic show in the world, and they have 3 companies working at the moment. So the European tour is just finished. I was with the US tour for 3 months, and they have a residency in Reno at the moment, one of the casinos there. And recently, the last few months, the company that runs it were taken over by Cirque du Soleil. So,
Wow.
yeah.
So where next then for you? With this...
Bowden.
Bowden, that's what I was going to say. Stop it.
You too.
Bowden's very nice now here in South Australia. They've knocked over all the old houses and stuff. It's very upmarket.
Yes, it is, but I did actually wonder where you were performing next.
Oh, where I'm performing next? I'm
At home.
No, off to Portugal next week.
Oh, Portugal's
Yeah.
lovely. That was one of my stops.
Oh, yeah.
Lisbon and Porto. Beautiful places.
I also went to Mile End as well.
Where are
I
you,
enjoyed that.
Where are you going
That's
in
a
Portugal?
very good question.
Next?
Lisbon, I think.
okay.
So it's for
I've got a
publicity
lemon
for
tree at home that's a Lisbon. Does that count? No.
No.
Okay.
No.
Ray, can we take you back, though? When you were just a mere slip of a lad, you also hosted a kids show, didn't you, on Channel 10?
Yeah, I did a short stint on a show called 10 out of 10.
With Leonie Page.
Yeah,
I just
Leonie
remembered
Page
that.
as well, South
Oh,
Australian performer.
beautiful performer.
And also, as you did, I did a little bit of work with Here's Humphrey.
Yep.
And that unfortunately named children's show on Adelaide, Come On Kids.
Yes. I'm just moving straight on. The interesting thing about you is, though, that you started really as a sort of a young magician with magic in mind initially. Who were your greatest influences, do you think?
Oh, Malcolm Hazlitt. No. Well, actually, Malcolm was a big influence on me.
I bet he was.
Yeah, I'm still paying royalties on things that he's...
I was best man at his wedding.
He was.
That worked
Lovely.
out.
That didn't work out well, did it? Gene Raymond, who was a South Australian magician.
That's who I was really
Gene.
going
In
to.
fact, my son, it was named after Gene Raymond because he was such a nice fellow.
He was.
Yeah.
He looked like a magician. He sort of sounded like a magician. He didn't talk much. I remember he said to me once, if only I'd known somebody like you who could have taught me to speak better and to articulate more what he was doing, because he used to get all his stuff out of books and he'd piece together what one magician would say and what another magician would say and marry it all together and make and talk.
Yes.
But he was a wonderful mute magician, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And he was a world champion in cards and doves and...
Well, back in 1986, I was in Harrogate at a magic convention, and this elderly magician came and sat down, and he said, "Oh, where are you from?" or something, but with a Scottish accent, not Australian. I said, "Oh, from Adelaide." He said, "Oh, one of the best magicians I ever met came from Adelaide, and that was Gene Raymond."
Yeah.
So that was
Wow.
beautiful, eh?
Yeah.
Well, he influenced us all in different ways. So where did you find this magic thing? Was it something that fascinated you as a kid?
As a child, I liked puppets and magic and ventriloquism. Yes, a little bit. And
Is it in your pocket?
Sorry?
Is he in your pocket?
No, he's not. I have an inner child, though. Would you like to hear?
Yeah. That's why you're called unusual.
You don't do that at the airport when they're checking your bags. They'll learn that once. I like to do that to children sometimes. I go, after the show, if we're doing a public show, I say, they'll like say, want to say hello, and I say, oh, would you like to see something freaky? And they go, oh, yeah. I said, but it's freaky. And the kids go, yeah, sure. So I pick up a little book and I hold it in front of my face and I do the little baby, like, hello. And their faces go like... It's worth watching.
Yes, I'm sure it is. Yeah. Where did you find that?
It was in the back of my throat.
Yes.
No, I was good at it when I was a baby, so I just
thought you kept it going.
Just kept it going. Yeah, okay, I like that.
Oh,
so you started, and people like Jean Raymond encouraged you.
They did.
To go further. When did you start breaking away from sort of the standard magic stuff?
Well, I think like anything, you need to get a base on things. You need to know your subject. So I studied magic for many years, and then once you have a vocabulary of tricks and methods, and then you start formulating your own. You start, putting things together and finding your own personality, who you're going to be on stage. That's why I went to your school, Malcolm, way back when.
But you always said it's where the magic comes from. You've always said, where does the magic come from?
Oh, right.
That's the thing that you've really got to understand. Yes.
Oh, yes,
I thought that was very wise for one so young.
Well, obviously I forgot it. But no.
It happens as you age.
Yeah, I think it's true. It's magic is, to me, because I've been involved with it so long, I wanted to bring in allied arts and make a hybrid performance. And fortunately, I pursued those things, and that's why now I get work with other companies in other countries.
Well, because you're not like anybody else.
No, but I really am harking back to like an earlier time of variety and vaudeville. So I'm like a retro act in some ways.
But when you say you studied magic, how did you study magic? Because it's not exactly a school. You don't go to Hogwarts.
Well, you can go to magic schools now, and so it's when I used to go to the State Library because it was the only place in Adelaide that you could get magic books. You could see magic books. They were antique books. And it's quite funny because I was looking through these antique books and I realised that I'd actually became the books, because in the old magic books, they have ventriloquism. Do they? Yes, they do. And they have hand shadows and various other allied arts, which were part of musical and vaudeville. And
well,
so
of course,
that's really what my act consists of now.
Well, speaking of the hand shadows, I guess that routine is what literally shot you to fame around the world.
Yeah, it's funny because it wasn't something that I planned. It was something I'd been doing for a long time, as you know. In fact, the first job I did it on was one of your jobs at the Adelaide
The first
Casino.
time, it's clear that we know each other quite well. I remember this really clearly. You came round to my place with a lamp, and on my lounge room blind, which was white, you did it, and you said, you're the first one to see, what do you reckon of this? You're the first one to see me doing it. I lay claim to that, whether it's true or not.
Privileged.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. Because it was just something I wanted to see if I could do. So I played with it, and then many years later, the YouTube was just starting, and the internet was just starting. It was its rise in late 2007. I did a job for the Sydney Theatre Awards, and
was it the Mo Awards?
No, it was it's the Legit Theatre. Because actually the promoter kept asking me to come and do it, and I said, well, how much are you going to pay? And he's like, I'm not going to pay anything. It's a big honour for you. Anyway, in the end, I acquiesced and I did it, and Fox did it up as an email attachment because it worked out it was just over a megabyte because it was just black and white, really, with hand shadows. Yes. And it went around the world in about a week. It shot off, and people... It was the first time when that... I'm still really one of the only variety artists in the world to have a hit record based on Louis Armstrong's Wonderful World.
Yes.
And estimated over 200 million people have now seen it through various appearances and thing. And
so it's worthwhile, if you haven't seen what we're talking about, just Google Raymond Crowe.
What a Wonderful World, and you'll find...
And you'll see a disc of light, and you'll see Satchmo come into the disc of light, just like we're looking at now.
Yeah.
There you go.
And it's amazing though, Ray, because that led to so much more.
Well, it opened doors.
So did you meet the Queen?
I did meet the Queen. She's about this big.
No, boss.
Well, standing there when I was standing.
So what we're saying is you did a Royal Variety Command performance because of that?
And it happened really fast because I was in Las Vegas at a magic convention and I wasn't checking my emails, and then suddenly there was an email from what was David Letterman's Late Show.
Yep.
And it sort of went through America first, then it went to the UK, and then I got a email from the Royal Variety, thanks to some friends of mine, Hale and Pace, who were some English comedians.
Who you worked,
worked
doing
a lot
a
with.
backup.
And so I wrote to them, I said, hey, I'm coming over to do the Royal Variety. And Norman Pace wrote, I know he had forwarded it on to the Royal Variety performance.
Aha.
So, yeah. And,
So now you know how that happens.
And,
Well, we're going to find out a whole lot more about Raymond Crowe in just a moment, so stay with us. We've got to take a quick break and we shall... Can you do a puff of smoke?
I can do a naked hand shadow. Close your eyes.
Fascinating.
Well done. We're back with this very funny person, Raymond Crowe.
This very funny person. Where are they? Where are they?
It's delightful.
Want me to do the little baby bit? That was
No,
pretty
no,
good.
not again.
So, Ray,
all I
just name drop for a minute some of the bigger shows you've been on, both in television and
I don't
stage.
know. Well, I did do Broadway with The Illusionists a couple of years ago. And
Was that amazing? Because in Australia, everybody thinks, you know, if you're in show business, Broadway is the
Is
big...
that it? That's the ultimate.
It's hard because when you're in a show like The Illusionists, they get to choose what you do. So it's a bit like what vaudeville was. You know, your actors know
Yep.
that's the act you're going to do. And so that's quite difficult when you feel like it's not for you. Say, oh, I don't think this is the right thing for this show, but then you have to make it work. So it was really interesting because audiences are audiences throughout the world, unless they're from New Jersey, and then they're kind of tough.
Oh, really?
This won't
What
go
happened
there.
there? No, what happened?
No, it's because I do a little bit where I get somebody up from the audience and I ask them their name. I say, sorry, what's your name? Sorry? Your name is? Janice.
Janice.
So, and I throw their voice. And because of the nature of the show was so fast, normally I would when I go out and find a volunteer, because they're real people that I use, I would just check that they're the right person, but because the show's so packed, they say, oh, you've got to get them up straight away. And I got like a week of alpha males, and they're the toughest because they want to better you, and instead of play is what you're looking for. So it's interesting. But in the end, you win because you
keep going.
You've got control, you've got the microphone. But for those who haven't seen you do this, it's the fact of people just become sort of a bit dumbfounded because you are saying what they appear to be thinking when they're not even thinking or saying that, and yet their facial expressions, whatever you say to them, seems to be what they're saying. So the magic of it is that human condition thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
We were just saying in the break there how different it is from being a young performer when suddenly you're the older performer in a show working with a whole lot of younger performers.
Yeah.
Mind you, they'd be really struggling to match your youthful looks, whatever age they were.
Mr. Peter Pan.
Yes.
No, it's but it is interesting.
No, it's our makeup girls. They took hours.
They did great. I know. It was inside of my ear.
Yes.
I've been washing that out for a month. So in this last tour that I did with The Illusionists, I was the oldest performer, and that was the first time that's happened to me, where everybody else was younger than me. You know, but you know that youth and talent can always be overcome through old age and treachery. So, so that's my next.
And you say, how many are in the group?
It depends.
How many performers?
Usually they have about seven magicians, and they're chosen because of their different forms. So one might be an escapologist, really, or a daredevil, or there'll be a manipulator, someone who produces cards, or something like Jean used to do. They're usually Korean because they're just fantastic at it.
Amazing,
Really?
yeah. Absolutely amazing.
And
You swear that they're coming out of nowhere.
Is that right?
yeah, and you should, and then. They would be in this show. There was a female magician, Sabine. She was from the Netherlands, and there was a sort of like the compere role was played by an English chap. So
Is there a camaraderie between you all because you all have this love of the obscure?
yeah, it's interesting because you can speak a similar language, which is been rare for me because in Adelaide hasn't been that many people. There's a lot of amateur magicians who are really great and they love magic, but it's harder. There are a few that I seek out, but to be able to talk on different sort of concepts, sort of like, oh, I really would like it to feel like this. Not so much about how it works.
But that's what we were saying before about where does the magic come from? So
Well, it comes from you.
Yeah,
In
well,
the end,
no,
the
but-
biggest secret, as we know, is yourself, and it's the hardest thing.
But is it you, or is it magic that's just in the air, or is it magic within the props or whatever you're using?
Well, it depends what you're... I like sort of a little bit the accidental magic, sort of that it sort of happens a little bit.
Like your dancing coat, for example.
Yeah. And the nicest thing is...
You're the only one doing...
Well, I was, but people...
Knocked it off?
People knock off magic all the time because it's hard to copyright. You can't really copyright it.
No.
Because it's not a script, it's not a
So-
song.
No.
It's just an
Yeah,
idea.
although people had done shadows before, no one had done it quite like you.
No, there are amazing hand shadow artists in the world, far better than I. Usually Indian.
Right.
A lot of
Oh,
really
not
good
seen that,
Indian.
yeah.
Yeah. And but my interest in it was just to see if I could do it and what I could bring to it. And then I had a friend who was a doctor, and she suggested What a Wonderful World, because it sort of encompassed animals and humanity and that. And it was really because of that song. In fact, the nicest thing was the guy who co-wrote What a Wonderful World, Mr. Weiss, when he was alive still, he was shown it in New York, and he sent me the sheet music signed with Satchmo on the cover to Raymond Crowe. Yeah, Raymond Crowe. But and it was beautiful because, and that's what was a nice moment in time, because suddenly that's what happened with the shadows, is people passed it to people in authority who normally before, if you had a tape of your act, you couldn't get anybody to watch it. But now...
No, the old show reel thing is sort of gone now.
And now with what's fortunate now, if something's on YouTube or whatever, if somebody likes it, they can send it to somebody else who might like it, who might be a booker or a TV show or whatever that is. And that's really what happens, yeah. And that, which, say before you couldn't get anybody to look at it.
No, that's right.
So let alone coming from Adelaide for like the Late Show or the Royal Variety, you could send them 100 tapes and they'd never get around to watching it.
No, that's right.
Yeah.
But going back to that piece of music, have you had that framed? Do you have that?
Well, I do have it. It's in a safe place. But I when I was younger...
Not in the toilet. You're not leaving it
of,
there again.
Not like you.
Well,
Leave
no,
it.
yeah. Well, it was funny. I had a friend who was in The Illusionists, who's actually about my age, and he came over, and his wife said to my house and said, "You're the first magician who I've come to that doesn't have pictures of himself on the wall." And so I'm always hesitant. I don't put up. I'm not interested.
But Ray, you should do what I do, because Janice just alluded to that. They're in the toilet. I've got all the show photos in the toilet.
So you can look at it all the time.
I converted my lounge room
Better
into a
timing.
toilet for the purpose, but, it works well.
Anyway.
So,
reviews in.
Ray, what advice would you give someone who's interested in magic but doesn't quite know where to start or what to do?
I think now with YouTube and with you can get a lot of teaching videos and stuff, instant downloads. The advantage of that is you can suddenly learn mechanically how to do quick tricks quickly, but you don't build your knowledge base. So you really it's like learning one song on the piano. You don't know what those notes are. You don't know why those combinations happen, but you can do it. And
It's like a muscle memory thing.
Yeah. So, but you don't know why the notes are next to each other. So my suggestion always is what I tried to do, which because I read books, they said get some theatrical skills. So I went to your school, Malcolm, and I didn't take enough to talk, speaking lessons because I mumble, and I studied.
But that's
with
actually
Madame
part of
Zoe.
your charm, Ray, I've got to say.
Mumbling Raymond.
Yes,
Okay.
it is.
Well,
But
I
it
did
is.
study mime.
You've got
You don't
this
have to say
lovely,
a lot, mate.
endearing quality that you know, it's childlike, but
Incoherent,
it's sophisticated childlike. I'm trying to.
He's going to do that baby thing
Try to-
again.
he
He
will,
keeps
he will,
going
he will.
child.
Yes.
I do love that.
So,
Get him out in a minute.
so all of these original things, though, that you've come up with, like the dancing coat, for example, and
So clever.
the what am I
Paul
doing?
act. Oh yeah, but that was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago, but it was original and different.
Well, yeah. But the secret now is to make... Interesting, this version of The Illusionist, virtually every act got people from the audience. And when I saw the lineup and what was on, I went, boy, because normally we have a big illusionist doing and dancing girls and things like that to satisfy that spectacle.
Yes.
But the fact that there wasn't a lot of big boxes and it was just people, and when you bring up a person from the audience, it changes the dynamics because anything could happen.
Anything
Yeah.
can happen.
And also now it makes it, the audience can live through that spectator as well, you know, and see the magic through their eyes more.
Yep.
And so it was probably one of their most, I thought it was a very successful show because of that fact at the end. The very thing I thought would be its problem was the very thing
Was
that
its strength.
the audience, because it wasn't like television, you see, that
Audience
people knew
participation.
that this person on stage was real
Yeah.
from the audience.
They weren't a
and
plant.
They weren't a plant,
Yep.
and it was happening. It was still
Yeah.
working.
Yes.
And
And magic has changed because now there's a lot more of the sort of mind-reading magic. What's that called? It's
mentalists.
mentalists.
Yeah.
There's more mentalism coming in, and a lot of the English magicians we're seeing here are doing that sort of work. In a way, is that moving magic to a different level, do you think?
It was always there. The mentalism's interesting because it touches on a lot of belief systems as well.
Yeah.
And
Hold
so-
it. I'm having a flash. We've got to go. We'll be back. So we're here with special guest Raymond Crowe.
We are. What were
Could you make
doing?
her disappear?
I don't do requests.
We were talking about mentalism. Do you use mentalism, do you think, in what you do?
No, I'm more interested in... I'm not interested in standing up there and being the all-powerful person in magic. That's never been my interest. My interest has been a much more human side of it. I don't begrudge it. I think it's great. And we had Colin McLeod, who was on America's Got Talent last time, Scottish chap, very aggressive sort of act, and they loved it. But and mentalism taps into something else, because with magic you know it's a trick, but with mentalism it's a little further disguised, and as I say, it taps into belief systems and whether the person's, they may do a disclaimer, this is not real, can't, but people want to believe, and it's actually quite a strong thing. But interesting, like 15
Connects
years
with
ago,
a very basic human emotion, I guess, doesn't it?
yeah, people would really love to believe that it's possible to read minds, and who knows, perhaps they can.
Many, many years ago, when I first saw Jean Raymond perform, who we were talking about at the beginning of this, I remember this so well. I saw him producing cards and doves, and I was so interested in it. My mother said to me, because I was about 6 or 7 at the time, don't get involved in that, that's of the devil.
Oh, really?
And it's just interesting how times have changed. you
Yes
know.
and no. I mean, when we were on tour with the Illusionists, we went through the Bible Belt there, and that's still there. And also, if you, the Illusionists were going to go to Saudi Arabia, but they can't do it because it's magic.
That's interesting,
They
yeah.
don't make a distinction between us frauds and, yeah.
Raymond, it's been just lovely to have you on the program. I do hope that you've enjoyed meeting Raymond Crowe, instead of seeing him perform in the way that he does, to meet the real man behind the magic.
But if you do ever get the chance to watch him perform, don't miss it, because he's
I
extraordinary.
absolutely agree. Thank you, Raymond.
Thank you. Do you want me to do the baby again?
Yes.
I think
Yeah,
I've got
okay.
too much mileage.
And
Too much mileage out of that.
and keep yourself nice until next time we see you. Next
On our time.
Bye, everyone.